So Micah Parsons is a Green Bay Packer. And let me just give you a little insight into my life, right? I know a lot of people. That's inarguable. I think most people, you get to our age and you know a lot of people. Now, I know a lot of people in sports and in entertainment. None of this is new information, right? None of it is new information. But I do know a lot of people in sports. I do know a lot of people that are influential in sports, especially in the sport of football. And so what happened was 2 days ago, John Kuhn, who works in state in radio, tweeted out Micah frickin' Parsons. So people lost their mind, and they came to me because they think, well, you know everything. I am not an NFL insider. I don't purport to be. It didn't make any sense to me at all, right, that the Cowboys wouldn't just sit tight and go, hey, if we can't come to an agreement, you play this year, then you become a free agent next year, knowing you can franchise tag them. Right? That was my thoughts. I was wrong. So maybe we need an explanation why, by many people's estimation, the best defensive player in football was traded like a week and a half before the season was going to begin. Here's Jerry Jones, owner of the Cowboys, explaining why the deal was made.
But we have the highest paid player in the NFL at quarterback. And we made that commitment last year, and we're proud we made it. It had everything to do with this decision. Mm-hmm. Everything. It is give us every opportunity with Dak Prescott and Lamb and the base that we've got to win now. This gives us a better chance to be a better team than we have been the last several years since Micah's been here. Not any negative on Micah, but we're trying to get better. We're trying to stop the run and stay in the hunt. I am very excited beyond any consideration of a regret of the consideration that we got in this trade and to have the player. I'm very excited about that. It is more in keeping within my mind what's in the best interest of the Dallas Cowboys.
So all that wording is really interesting, right? What does it all mean? What does it all mean? First, let me take it to Jane Slater. She's the NFL Network reporter on the Cowboys. She used to do a podcast on the Cowboys as well, so she's dialed in there. She had this to say on the herd in regards to Micah Parsons and how he was perceived in the Cowboys locker room.
The truth of it is the building won here. Starting about 2 years ago, we started hearing frustrations within the locker room. And when I say frustrations, I don't want to sit here and say that Micah Parsons is a problem player. He certainly doesn't have problems off the field. It's more of, in talking to former coaches, one of the concerns was, does he love football, or does he love the idea of being a football player that gets the accolades, then gets the camera and the podcast? And there would be frustration when they were in meeting rooms and he would drift in and out. I would describe it as just he needs a coaching staff that's really going to dive in and invest in him. We saw that with Dan Quinn. We saw Mike Zimmer sort of buy in as much as he could, last year, but he's that type of player that just requires a lot of buy-in and attention. And I think it started to wear on the locker room. Let me change that. I know it wore on the locker room because in talking to previous coaching staffs, in the exit interviews, there were a number of players who came to them and said, we have to do something about Micah.
We have to do something about Micah. That was actually uttered. So in some ways, this is about culture, which is honestly the same reason that the Mavs moved off of Luka Doncic. I think the problem with it becoming about culture, right, is that if he was this big of a problem, if his problems outweighed his production, then why did you offer him a 5-year contract worth $40 million per year? Again, we can get into how everything went sideways. We can get into the fact that Jerry tried to negotiate without the agent, and it would allow me to speculate. Hey, I don't know. Maybe Jerry got ticked because Parsons was a bad actor in this deal, and I don't mean that he was a poor actor. I mean he's a bad actor from the standpoint of he started the negotiations without his agent. Then when the negotiations came to a head, then he ran back to his agents like, hey, they're trying to negotiate without me. I don't know. That's a possibility. What doesn't make sense about the Cowboys, about what Jane Slater's saying, and I'm not saying in any way that what Jane Slater's saying is not accurate, but the idea that the Cowboys moving off of Micah Parsons makes them a better team because he was killing their culture because he's not truly invested in being a great football player, just being a Micah Parsons big personality, that sounds great. Why'd you offer him $40 million guaranteed per year? Why'd you come to an agreement? That hasn't been answered for me. But I can tell you from a Green Bay, Wisconsin perspective, does the idea of him needing a podcast, needing attention, wanting to get likes, should that be troublesome? Yeah, it doesn't fit with how the Packers roll. Doesn't fit with how the Packers roll. But the argument the Packers can make, whether it works long term or not, is, hey, you're making $47 million a year now. You don't need a podcast. I do think a good young locker room, actually an older locker room is probably the best place for that type of act. A younger locker room, it can go either way. But the part of the argument that doesn't make sense from the Cowboys' perspective is, I hear it, I get it. He had a podcast. The messaging is, I don't know if he loves football as much as just loves the benefits of being a football player. That is. Those are key words for coaches to hear because you want somebody who loves what they do. You love what you do, then you don't have to worry about them quitting on a fourth down play when all is for naught. Football guys like guys that want to play football, that are grinders, that love playing football. Basketball, same thing. Baseball, same thing. We talk about it all the time. You have to have guys that love it. And not everybody's going to love it. But at his position, at his price tag, he's got to love it. I get it. But I'm struggling with if he drove everybody so crazy, why did they offer him such a big deal and then come to an agreement on the deal? If you didn't want him and you wanted this to play out as such, you could have moved him, or you could have gotten as much out of him as you wanted this year, make him play under that contract, fine him if he doesn't play hardball. Instead, you bailed. You got a really good player. You got 2 picks. But it doesn't make sense in terms of how they handled everything. I get it. Micah Parsons is this new generation. It's no different than in baseball. Guys that like to Cadillac around the base pass, guys that handle things different. The old guard doesn't like it. And eventually the new guard becomes the old guard, and they don't like it either. And I don't know what happens with his podcast or other podcasts, or if he tones it down a notch or tones it down 2 notches. I don't know. What I do know is that the Cowboys, up until very recently, desperately wanted him to return and were willing to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. That, to me, does not scream of a guy who they're concerned about what he does for their culture. Now, if Jerry Jones is, forget what he's saying, what he's thinking is, this allows us to load up for next year, and by paying Clark, pennies in comparison to what you would have had to pay Micah, we save money, we get more draft picks, we load up on talent. That all sounds great. But don't tell me your aims are to be competitive when you lose the best defensive player in the division, maybe the best defensive player in the NFL, and you replace him with a good player, 9 years in, nothing, and a guy who lacked the pass rushing that Micah Parsons had.